It's Die Hard, but with Santa. Fuck yeah.
Violent Night was released in 2022 and was directed by Tommy Wirkola, who among other things is most known for the Dead Snow films. It tells the story of a rich family who are taken hostage by a group of mercenaries that want to steal their money. However, their plans are interrupted when Santa Claus himself interferes as he tries to save the family. As I said in my intro, it's basically Die Hard with Santa Claus as the protagonist. But that being said, this movie is still very important to me, and I'll explain why. During the tail end of 2022, I was having a rough time. I was struggling mentally and started to lose interest in a lot of my favorite hobbies, including movies. But I remember my brother and I had somewhat of an interest to go see this movie, and I'm thinking like, hey, why not? Maybe it'll turn out to be good.
And let me tell you guys, Violent Night is a prime example of a film that I just needed at the time.
As silly as it may seem, Violent Night has actually rejuvenated my passion for films in a way. It was one of the very few times I remember going to see a new movie, not expecting it to be great, and yet it turned out to be a lot of fun. The sheer amount of joy that I got out of the film was palpable, largely due to the fact that my brother and I saw it with a fairly large crowd. Everyone was laughing and it added to the experience in a very positive way. The opening scene where Santa throws up on a bartender gives you a great idea of what to expect from the script.
Seriously, throughout the entire runtime of this movie, I had a grin on my face that would easily rival the Joker's.
The film manages to find a balance of comedy and tense action, which is good in my opinion. The movie also takes a few notes from the Home Alone series.
Only this time, the traps actually kill the characters.
Jesus shit!
Now, as much as I love Home Alone, even as a kid, I knew deep down, yeah, there's no way someone can actually survive with 4 bricks being thrown at their head. For me, it was a breath of fresh air for the filmmakers to actually lean into, well, more of a violent angle.
You might be asking yourself, does the film follow the Die Hard formula a bit too closely? And in some cases, it does.
We have a group of characters that are taken hostage, the villains want the valuables from the vault, the hero is in the wrong place at the wrong time, he starts messing with their plans, the two start talking through a walkie-talkie, you get the idea. And for some, this might be a bit too derivative of that film, and that's fine. For me, however, I like to look at the film as an homage to Die Hard. It knows exactly what it is, and it doesn't try to hide that fact.
Poetry book. Die Hard on Blu-ray.
But with all that said, this film is just fucking fun as hell.
Now, of course, I'm not going to sit here and try and pretend like the film was flawless or anything, but it's just a good time. Before we do get into the flaws, however, I'd like to discuss the positives. First and foremost, David Harbour as Santa Claus is quite possibly one of the best casting choices I've seen. The first time I was introduced to him as an actor, as I'm sure many were, was for his role in Stranger Things as Jim Hopper. I thought he was fantastic in the show, and his performance in Violent Night is no exception.
Another thing that sets apart this Santa from other portrayals is the fact that he's not your stereotypical, commercialized, loving Santa. No, quite the opposite, in fact.
As he delivers presents on Christmas Eve, he takes breaks to drink at bars. He openly says the holiday feels more greedy than ever, and how people are ungrateful for what they have.
Maybe this is my last year. The last Christmas.
Many centuries ago, he was a warrior who raided, pillaged, and killed people for his own selfish gain, but he eventually turned his life around before becoming Santa Claus. Whether he was contractually obligated or not, the movie never explains.
And this is something that I actually quite love about this movie.
The movie isn't afraid to toy with the idea of Santa being a flawed representation of the holiday. He's often portrayed as a jolly magic being that can grant wishes and bring joy to everyone in the world. And while that might be true to an extent, he admits that he can't fix families or broken relationships. Even Trudy, the young girl who admires and loves Santa, asks him why he did all those bad things in his past.
Why'd you do those things?
Because I was mean.
Which is putting it lightly, if we're being honest, but hey, I get what they're trying to do.
I could go on and on, but to sum it all up, I like what they did with David Harbour as Santa Claus. I like his brief backstory, I love the visual gags with his magic, and I like the idea that he isn't perfect, just like John McClane. Even when you break down the fight sequences, he's not perfect when it comes to that either, as that part of him has been dormant for so long, which explains why it takes him a little longer to get a handle on the goons.
And oh my god, the shed fight scene is fucking glorious.
Admittedly, it's a little too dark visually and there's some CGI blood, but with some decent fight choreography, over-the-top kills, and a fitting song, it all came together so beautifully. It was legitimately one of the most entertaining movie scenes I saw in a theater back in 2022. With all that said, I'm going to do a lightning round for the rest of my positives, as I feel there isn't much more to discuss. The young girl Trudy, played by Leah Brady, is another highlight of the film. I was a bit worried that she would turn into an annoying character, but thankfully that isn't the case. Not only is she likable, but she's resourceful and helps Santa throughout the film.
Even the scene where Trudy is setting up traps for the villains is fucking gold.
I can't really add much more, she's just a good character. Most of the villains are alright, however the main villain, Scrooge, played by John Leguizamo, is the best of the bunch. Which is good, because like in Die Hard, the film's villain is integral to its plot. And while his backstory may be a little cliché, it's at least something.
As for the lighting, the cinematography, the editing, the music, all that jazz, it's universally very well done. I mean, it's not exactly what I would call groundbreaking, but it doesn't have to be.
That being said, I do have a few negatives, the biggest of which is the actual family who's being held hostage. With the exception of Trudy and her mother, Linda, everyone else in the family are just flat out unlikable. Now, I get what the writers were trying to do. The film constantly emphasizes how many people nowadays are greedy, inconsiderate, or selfish, and to its credit, the film does show that with the family.
Unfortunately, however, this, as a result, makes me care about them even less than I already did.
The best thing that I can say is that they do at least have a couple funny lines of dialogue, and they do at least somewhat redeem themselves by the end of the movie, but that's by the end of the movie. It's pretty much over at that point. At the end of it all, I'm just glad that at least some of them were likable enough, because if the entire family were assholes from start to finish, then this movie could have easily lost my interest. With all that said, I absolutely love Violent Night. It's bloody, action-packed, intense, and is now among my regular rotation of holiday films for December. And while it may be derivative in a lot of areas, it has a lot of charm to warrant its existence. If you love Die Hard and haven't seen Violent Night, absolutely give it a watch this holiday season.
With all that said, guys, thank you very much for continuing to watch my Christmas movie marathon. This has been a blast, and I hope to continue entertaining you guys. With all that said, guys, this has been That Guy Matt, and I hope you guys all have a very safe and happy holidays. And until next time, I hope you all take care.